like he has 3 employees and he's running this efficient business where he's doing all different types of exit strategies, and he seems like he's crushing it, and he's just really, really knowledgeable about the creative financing aspect.
If you're skilled in sales or you've talked to a lot of people, then that might be something you want to pursue within real estate. You might find yourself a little niche there where you might not realize you'd be even better than you think at investing, where maybe you're not the numbers guy, but you are the relationship person and can get someone on the phone and patch the deal together.
Me, like, kind of being burned out on my job, wanting to do something different, that kind of met with, hey, there's this whole real estate thing out there, and this idea of like, oh, maybe you can be financially free, maybe you can control your income. And
you know, in a situation he's been for 10 years, so there's a comfortability, but I think we probably both feel that, like, barely employable, right? Like, it's like that, you know, that type of thing.
And I remember having that conversation with my boss at the time, and she was just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and I'm like, why is this giant corporation not more interested in like actually finding people jobs that fit what they're good at, not just like throwing them in jobs?
Welcome to the Weekly Juice Podcast, where we discuss all things real estate, personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and the many ways to achieve financial independence. We interview accomplished investors and entrepreneurs with the goal that their stories inspire you to take control of your financial future. Here to get your creative juices flowing, while also documenting their own personal investing journeys, are your hosts, Corey Jacobson and Ryan Bevilacqua.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys Ryan and Corey here with another episode for you. Today we had investor Aaron Bihl on the show. He's an expert on buying off-market deals and currently buys about 10 deals per month and has over 200 units in the San Antonio, Texas area.
Yeah, he does rentals, flips, wholesale. He's buying trailers. And as Ryan mentioned, the San Antonio area, which we know some investors that are in Texas. I don't know if we've ever interviewed anybody from San Antonio, but Aaron got started in 2019. He just was like, corporate America, you know, we've had this story on before, right? Corporate America is not for me. How can I kind of control my own destiny? He mentioned he was going to, like, he's not a good employee. And we talked about that in the episode, like what makes you not a good employee? And because we have sometimes I feel like I have a very similar trait to that. But he is now, like, he has 3 employees and he's running this efficient business where he's doing all different types of exit strategies, and he seems like he's crushing it, and he's just really, really knowledgeable about the creative financing aspect. And he has a really cool story about a specific deal where they listed the property for, the seller did, for like $340,000. They ended up buying it for like $170,000, and with lots that were paid off too, so that they were able to sell lots for like 40 or 50 grand. So you can tell why somebody's able to leave their job when you can make this type of significant money in that creative financing game. Gave us a lot on marketing. He gave us a lot on just deal structure. I thought it was a really good episode.
Yeah, and one last thing he talked a lot about was the relationship side of real estate. And a lot of times people make it transactional, and things that he's learned along the journey is really like getting to know the people that he's buying from. And houses are not always just houses, they're homes and not just properties, right? Like, people have a story behind there, and they want to know who's buying their house, and they want to know that's going to be taken care of. And I get it. It makes a lot of sense. And I think we haven't really chatted about that in the real estate investing game. I know a lot of people think it's just transactional and making money and investing and you know, turning dollars into more dollars, but really getting the story behind it was kind of cool to talk about. And I think that's another thing that if you're skilled in sales or you've talked to a lot of people, then that might be something you want to pursue within real estate. You might find yourself a little niche there where you might not realize you'd be even better than you think at investing, where maybe you're not the numbers guy, but you are the relationship person and can get someone on the phone and patch the deal together. So my gears were turning a little bit.
So this is why AI is not going to replace us, dude. They can't replace the people, I hope.
I don't totally agree with that. I think that, dude, I mean, at least the systems and things that come in, like AI
they can't replace this conversation. You know what I mean?
Not like, yeah, I know. Maybe, hopefully not in our lifetime.
You saw the guys at the ones at the Chargers game that were, dude, like sitting there.
It's like iRobot.
Horrifying. Anyway, we didn't talk about AI in this episode, but you brought that up, just mentioning, like, you know, the human aspect of the real estate game and how it really is that person to person, that connection, that I want to sell this house to this person because I feel like they're a good person. Hopefully robots don't become good enough robots that they replace us and buy buy all the real estate.
Yeah, I will say I'll recommend a quick book for people. I think we both read it. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yep.
Yeah. And that just talks about a lot about relationships and how you can leverage, I guess, your personality and relationships to level up in your life. So kind of plays the episode a little bit, but I think without further ado,
Let's do it.
let's bring in Aaron.
Yep.
Aaron, officially welcome to the show. Corey and I are so excited to have you on here, man. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So if you could take us through a little backstory on you. First, who you are and how you, maybe what you did pre-real estate investing and kind of how you transitioned into the world of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Aaron Bihl. I'm in the San Antonio, Texas market. Currently kind of have a wholesaling, home buying, flipping, wholesaling kind of sort of company. But before that, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio, went to school in Kentucky, went to grad school, all that stuff, moved to Texas to work in oil and gas. So then I worked in oil and gas for a few different companies for like 5 or 6 years. And then eventually kind of got to the point where, one, I didn't like that I couldn't progress at the rate I wanted to. But also I think somewhere along those lines, I just kind of figured out like, I'm not really good at working for people, which it took a few jobs and a few like switching companies and some of that to realize like, maybe it's a company, but maybe it's also me too. So at some point that kind of coincided with me, finding bigger pockets like everyone else in the world. And, kind of really like connecting with some of that and, realizing that the ideas I kind of thought I made up or had in my head, there was this whole group of people doing. So, me like kind of being burnt out of my job, wanting to do something different, that kind of met with, hey, there's this whole real estate thing out there. And this idea of like, oh, maybe you can be financially free. Maybe you can control your income and, not just get a 2 or 3% raise every year for working your ass off. So, that kind of all like came together over a year or two. And then I just kind of decided to quit my job. From there, I thought I had a plan. I didn't really. I thought I was really set up. I wasn't really. And then I got my license. So I did the traditional real estate stuff for a while. Started working for a broker that did investment deals, started doing some off-market stuff, working with people looking for investment properties, kind of literally just trying to do anything to make money and see kind of what sticks. And then from there, did a few off-market deals, worked with this broker where, the setup was pretty much we find the deal, he helps us, get it across the finish line, sell it, whatever, and then we split the profits. So after doing, 2 or 3 of those, where we didn't really have any marketing, it was just kind of like he turned us loose of like, hey, just go find a deal. And so I was just doing random stuff. I was the person who would like listen to Bigger Pockets every week and try something new and be like, oh, this is the thing. But eventually it was kind of like, cool, this is great. I've learned a lot. I don't really want to give away half of everything. I'm going to figure out how to do my own marketing, start my own, company buying off-market deals. And then that was in 2019. Fast forward to today, we probably buy 8 to 12 houses a month, kind of depending on month and all that stuff. And we flip, we wholesale, we wholetail, we have rentals, kind of everything. So
Cool.
That's kind of the quick story of then to now.
Cool. Yeah, you do it all, man. So that's great. You have all these extra strategies. I want to go back to something you said about, you didn't feel like you were a good employee. I'm curious about the traits that you found in yourself that made you realize that. And the reason why I asked the question is because I feel the same way. Now, Ryan and I still have our W-2 jobs. We're in good situations with good people. I work for my family. He works, in a situation he's been for 10 years. So there's a comfortability. But I think we probably both feel that like I'm barely employable, right? Like it's like that, that type of thing. So I'm curious, and barely just because of the autonomy that I think we want. I'm just, if you could elaborate, like what was it about that made you feel like you had to do this on your own? You had to break off.
Yeah. I love this conversation because I think like, I don't know, because I always tell people like, if you like your job, keep it, like do it, like invest on this. I think everyone should invest, but like don't just quit a job because you think like that's the goal.
Yep.
But with that, for me, it was I was in an industry it's very old school. And the feedback I got a lot of times was like, oh, like, you're a great employee, like you work really hard, but like you're not old enough. Like, you're not old enough to be promoted to this, even though like you have the expertise to and you work hard enough and all that. But so that was the feedback a lot. And then I just always thought like, cool, once I switch to, this role, that'll fix it. Or once I switch to this job, that'll fix it. And none of those things, like it did temporarily until I got to the point where I'm like, cool, you still haven't promoted me. Like you still haven't given me what I think I've earned or, what I'm after. And then it would come back to that. But I also remember like somewhere in there kind of getting into, more like self-development type stuff. And I don't know if you guys have ever done any of the like personality tests, like strength finders.
Yeah, strength finder, Colby. Have you ever done that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I somehow got into the strength finders thing. I don't even remember how, but I remember like going through it and being like, oh, these are my strengths. This is what I'm not good at. This is why I clash with my current job. And these are like, and I was like, so like enlightened by the whole thing of like, oh, maybe I'm just not in something that fits like the way I'm wired or my skills or whatever. And I remember having that conversation with my boss at the time, and she was just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and I'm like, why is this giant corporation not more interested in like actually finding people jobs that fit what they're good at, not just like throwing them in jobs? So then I was like, oh yeah, like this completely describes me. This is why I clash with this. This is why I don't like this part of my job. But like no one there had any interest in like any of that stuff or developing or trying to put people in roles that made sense, not just like, hey, this is the next progression, which is, crazy now because on the other side of that, now that I have employees, it's very much like, hey, this is like, you're a fit for the role, your personality fits the role. And like, if we have an opening here, we're not moving you to that because like those aren't the same skill set. So, and it's crazy because like in that corporate world, no one thought like that. No one thought like, the salesperson and the accountant probably don't have the same, personality profiles to be successful in those jobs. So that was kind of the thing for me that, eventually of that like clashing enough. And then real estate came in and I was like, cool, well, I'm going to try this. Or, I saw like some of the manager and director positions that everyone's like, hey, Aaron, you'll be in this in X number of years. And I'm like, I don't even know that I want that. Like, even if I'm there in 10 years and I'm making what you're making, that still doesn't look like something that would like satisfy me. So that's when I was kind of like, yeah, I got to get out of here.
Yep. So you left your job kind of without the full plan in front of you, right? You took that leap of faith where Ryan and I are in a situation where it's like we want to make sure that we're set up and we have this path. But it sounds like you just were like, nope, this is not for me. I'm going to go all in on X, Y, Z. And is that how it worked out for you?
I mean, it was a little more planned than that. Like I had, planned around when I'd get my bonus from work. I'd quit pretty much right after that. I'd also kind of like cut my expenses. Like I'll call it reverse house hacking. I rented my house out and moved in with a friend. And then, my main house was an Airbnb. I was renting a room for like $400 a month from a friend. So I'd kind of like done things to like lessen my expenses. And then I'd save money. So I had a little bit of a plan, but it wasn't like I'm going straight from this to this when, now I would tell someone like, cool, do that until you don't need the job anymore.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I was telling someone today, I was like, it would have taken them a year to fire me. Like I could have not shown up and it's a big enough company that like it would take them forever to get rid of me. And I could have just like rode out those benefits and the whole thing. But
I'm sure a lot of people
like,
do that.
I just couldn't do that. Right.
Where they call it like silent quitting, something like that. You just kind of like hide in the shadows. I have a question for you. So, the transition out of full-time employment to self-employed is a daunting one because, Corey and I are kind of running things as we still have our W-2 jobs. And there's a lot of different team members you need, including like a CPA, potentially a bookkeeper. And I mean, we're doing all these jobs on our own, right? And then you also maybe potentially need to hire out some tasks. Maybe you get a VA or an EA, depending on what you have. But everything costs money. And I think people are trying to find the balance of, when can I depart? Do I have enough coming in? But also the infrastructure of the business is one thing I want to talk about is, how did you go about building this thing so that way you can puppeteer it correctly, so that way you're generating revenue, but also still growing at the same time, right? And not feeling like you're just in that constant hamster wheel. And I know you have a lot of different strategies that go through this, but it's one thing to just like, for Corey and I, hey, we're going to invest in an Airbnb together, or we're going to invest in a duplex together. But to build infrastructure, to know we're going to go tackle the next deal and have a plan of attack. Maybe you can talk to that, and then the systems you put in place to, build yourself the little army that you have.
Yeah. So, I mean, the easy answer is, I didn't have a lot of systems. It was, and that's the thing you learn when you go from a W-2 to working for yourself, is like, it's very much like, you eat what you kill. So, and also, I guess just some mindset stuff on that, like literally the things I hated the most about my job, like I immediately missed the most. Like I wanted to work in an office. I wanted the stability. I wanted the structure, all the things that like I absolutely hated. I'm like, as soon as I quit, I'm like, well, it would have been nice to just get paid regardless of what I do today.
Yeah.
So there's so much of that, of the things you hate, you're like actually come to miss. And then you reach the point where you're like, I can never go back to that. But with that, it just became a thing of, I'm not super organized. I'm not super structured. And it was, my whole thing is just kind of like, especially early on in the business, is like, cool, what am I doing that generates revenue? Like, okay, I could like make spreadsheets. I could do this, I could do that. But it's like the things that make me money are getting on the phone, talking to sellers, doing these things. And it's forcing yourself to be in that mindset of like, what can I do that like actually moves the needle? What can I do that actually generates revenue? Because, in at least my W-2 job, like I maybe worked a few hours a day, but I would say like 8 or 10, right? And I think it's hard to flip that switch of like, I don't necessarily need to work 10 hours a day, but I need to be very productive in the time I am, or I'm not going to make money. So it's just very different, because like, you don't really have the ability to be like kind of inefficient and lazy when you're going to work for yourself, if you want to make it work. But then it's very much a thing of like, I don't know, we'll build this thing if we're flying it with, structure and systems and processes. It's, I don't know, we need to make money. Like that's kind of the top thing. And then, we'll hire out stuff as it makes sense. But that's like a great area that when, my now business partner, Jason, we partnered up like 2 years ago, and that's more his side of things, is like, very structured, dealing with like our operations stuff and like just all the organizational stuff that I'm like, I don't know, if that bill's not on auto pay, it may never get paid, like that's very much like, that's my personality. But, so it's definitely when you switch from W-2 to working for yourself, it's like, cool, like I maybe not have to work as much, but it's like, what makes money? What moves the needle? Like what actually matters in my work? Like, let's not just make a PowerPoint all day.
Yeah. And let's talk about some of those things that make money, because what you're basically saying, Aaron, is that what solves the problem of the organization is that you have enough revenue coming in that you can cover your expenses, and then you can figure all that shit out later. And that's really what
pretty much
comes down to. So let's talk about that. Like you seem, if you follow Aaron on social media, he has a lot of content around buying off-market deals. Like that's what you do, right? So let's talk about some of the strategies that you implement to buy the off-market deals. What marketing tactics, like what was your, I know you have a bunch of exit strategies, but I'm curious, like getting these deals under contract and dealing with sellers. What do you find that's most effective for you?
Yeah. So, I guess kind of a quick overview of our marketing. So we, pretty much everything we buy is direct to seller. So no realtors involved, no on the market, any of that stuff. So we're reaching out to sellers directly, or they're finding us, whatever that looks like. And then we're negotiating with them directly. So for us, the marketing looks like we mail quite a bit. We have pretty big online presence with Google ads, SEO, and then we have TV ads are kind of our 3 or 4 main things. We don't really do like the texting, cold calling. We've kind of dabbled in it in the past. Everything's kind of built around having a brand and kind of being omnipresent, and like, our marketing is gonna, if you go to our website, it's gonna follow you around forever. We kind of target more inbound, higher barrier to entry type marketing, if that makes sense.
Cool. So let's talk about the deal structures. And I think it's important to get into the nitty gritty, because people always hear about wholesaling, flipping, et cetera, like this off-market deal thing and creative financing. I think that's, there's a window here in the next couple of years, especially with low interest rates. There's, very high interest rates now, but there are still people that are maybe not able to afford their home or it's paid off and they have a very low interest rate and you want to take that property on. So let's talk about some of your tactics that you have within these off-market deals and the structure of talking to sellers, right? Are you talking about getting them on the phone and then going to an appointment? Do you have someone dialing for you? And maybe what do you talk about on the phone, just to give like behind the scenes on how this thing actually works?
Good questions. Love it. So the way our stuff's, I'll just kind of walk through like, hey, a lead comes in, what we do with it, right? So someone, sees us on TV or they find us on the internet, they call. We have an answering service, call porter. They're designed to take calls for real estate investors. They, get as much information about the house, and then our lead manager then calls them, builds rapport with them. We're big on like I always tell people, like, be memorable, like find something like you have in common with them, whether that's a dog or the Cowboys or, whatever. Actually get to know these people and care about them a little bit in the process. And then he's going to set an appointment for one of our sales guys or technically acquisitions managers. They're going to go out, look at the house in person, meet the person, build rapport with them, understand not only look at the house and see what's wrong with the house or what's not wrong with the house, but also kind of understand the person's situations. Because we have sellers that, like, it's like trading in a car. They just want to trade, equity for time. They just want the convenience. But then a lot of our sellers they have other stuff going on. They inherited the house. They have some sort of financial stressor, or the house is in disrepair, like all the, number of things that investment property might have. So our acquisitions people, they're spending probably 30, 45 minutes in person, always in person, getting to know the person, understanding their situation. From there, we're going to go back. I'm going to look at the house, tell them what to offer on it. Generally, we're offering like 65 to 75% of after repair value minus whatever repairs the house needs. And then our acquisitions guy is going to call back, make them the offer on the phone, negotiate that sale. And we're always making cash offers. We occasionally do some creative finance, but we're very much the cash offer people. We don't really renegotiate once we've seen it. We're good for it. We buy it. We don't really back out of deals. And that's just kind of how, we've built ourselves as like, hey, once we've seen it, like, we're probably not your highest offer. You can probably find someone to pay you more, but like, we're reliable. And a lot of times, they like us the best because we make that a point.
Yeah. And you've built that rapport, like you said. So you said you're doing 8 to 12 deals a month with that, which I think is awesome. Can you give us a breakdown? I want to get into like maybe a lucrative deal or something, maybe specifics on one deal if you could, but I'm curious about the breakdown between that 8 and 12 and like how many you end up keeping for yourself, how many do you end up flipping? Like, is there a goal to get it to a certain point and you're like, well, if we can't wholesale it right away, we'll flip it? Like, how do you structure the exit strategy?
Man, now you're asking me hard questions. So honestly, there's not as much structure with that. This year, we're not keeping very many just because with interest rates and our high property taxes in Texas, it's hard to make anything pencil. So we bought a few with, that we have actually bought subject to the existing loan that makes sense that we've kept. But our favorite strategy is actually wholetailing. So buy the house, clean it out, throw it on the market. We don't love like actual wholesaling. It just feels kind of slimy. I don't like the kind of dance of like, hey, you're telling this person this and that. And like, I don't know, we just don't like it, right? We do it just because we have to out of capacity. And then what we flip we kind of go back and forth. So we wholesale a lot up until, kind of midsummer last year of 2022. And then the market obviously went down and no one wanted to buy a house as is anymore. So we started flipping more because it's easier to sell something finished, like a nice finished product. So that's always just kind of changing and now we're kind of, as the market's in this weird spot again, we're kind of transitioning to more wholesale heavy and trying to be more nimble of like, we have the capacity to flip a lot of houses, but we don't really want to have 20 houses going on if the market gets slower than it already is, because it's super slow right now. So right now we're wholesaling more. We're still wholesaling, we're still flipping, but the goal is to, that wholesale probably be like 80%, try to keep less than 5 flips active at a time. And then kind of go from there. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, it did. It definitely did.
Okay.
I want to talk about maybe a wholesale deal that sticks out to you, because we talk about wholesaling, we talk about flipping, buy and hold, the BRRRR strategy a lot. Wholetailing doesn't come up too much on our show. I know there's not that much. It's nuanced, but there's not too much of a difference between that and wholesaling. Can you talk about, maybe just give us some rough numbers or specific numbers on a deal you've done recently that on the wholesale side that can paint the picture for our audience?
Yeah. Can I give you like a fun one, or does it just have to be a normal wholesale?
Yeah.
Oh, no, dude.
We like fun.
Be fun, dude. Come on.
Okay. Fun. So one I guess we haven't bought it yet. We just contracted it. So there's a certain area of town where I have found that a lot of times houses have extra lots with them. So it's an area where, like, when these people bought these houses in the 70s, the lots had like zero value. And, until recently, it's gone crazy there. So, a lot that maybe is worth, 5 or 10 years ago, $2,000 is now worth like 40 or 50. But like a lot of these houses, you'll look and you'll be like, oh, like you own the lots behind you and next to you, and like, what's up with these? So I did one of those like 3 or 4 years ago. I wasn't even interested in the house. And the guy was like, as I'm leaving, was kind of like, I was like, oh, where's your yard go? And he's like, all the way through that other street. And he's like, I'm actually on 6 lots. So on that one, I was able to sell the house. I think I bought it for $200, sold the house for $260, and then sold each of the lots for like $40, each of the 4 lots. So on one single family house, made like, I don't know, $150,000. And we just got one of those last week, which will now be the 4th or 5th time I've done one of these. It was actually on the market and not selling. The agent reached out to us. It was listed for $300. We offered him $165 or something. Actually, I think it was listed for $340. Then they dropped it to $300. We offered him like $165. He's like, no, I need $190, which we're like, whoa, like that's a big difference. So then I told our guys, like, hey, keep following up with this. Like, I feel like there might be something there. And the guy's like, he lives out of state and he's 96. I don't know why we know that, but we do. The agent told us that. So we follow up with him, and I was just like, and then they came back there, no, we can't do 190, we need 200. So I told our guys, I was like, see if we'll owner finance it, which like isn't a normal thing you would pitch to a 96-year-old dude. Because might not be alive forever.
Sure. You didn't have to say it, dude.
I think we got it.
So good.
But so I was like, see it, tell him we'll pay 200 and see if they'll owner finance it. And the agent's like, yeah, I think I'll go for that. And then I was like, what, like, did they give you any terms? And he's like, no. So our acquisitions guy. So I was like, cool. I'm asking for everything. So I'm like, how about like 200, we'll give you like 10 grand down, and we want 3% interest amortized over 30 years. And the agent was like, yeah, he needs to think about it, but I think we're good. He would like it if it ballooned, but he's kind of fine with the 30-year AM. I'm like, what is happening here? Whatever. So, and then they come back and they're like, we just want to do your original offer. Like, we'll do 173. And we're like, okay. Like, so we're buying at 173 cash. We plan on just listing the house for 200, selling the house. And then it has 3 lots with it that are nothing sold less than 42 for the lots. So we should be able to sell the house, own the 3 lots free and clear, sell them for like 40, 50 a piece, or we'll owner finance them, sell them for 50 or 60 a piece and have notes on them and make $100,000.
This is interesting, Aaron. I'm really glad you mentioned a story that's like this, because this guy listed it for 340, right? And basically what you're saying is he wanted like half, right? Like 160's, times 2 is 320, right? So was I getting that right? Like, he listed it for 340, dropped it to 300. You offered 160, and then you settled on 173. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. I mean, people list stuff like, so I think some people are still used to like 21 and 22 when like you just listed things for whatever and someone would buy it. We're in a world now where like even things listed right don't always sell. So these listings where people price them too high, like literally no one looks at them. So this has been on the market and it'd been like, well, like if he was just priced at like 250, like, or even like 275, somewhere like closer to where it should have been, you know, they would have made more money. They would have sold it, but they like listed it so like outlandishly that like no one would even like look at it. Cause like, why would I even entertain that? So, and then it's not selling. So then the agent reached out to us and was like, he just wants to move on. I'm like, well, how much does he want to move on?
Yeah,
So,
well, that was the point. That was why I brought it up, because what I'm saying is just because somebody lists it for a certain amount doesn't mean that that's what they need to get out of the deal or are really willing to take, especially if something sits. So it's that direct to seller, or that it sounds like there was an agent here, but the fact that you can get to the seller and get to his actual motivation, that helps you find out what he really needs. And somebody could have bought that property for 260, right, or whatever, like you said, but you got there at the right time and you were able to save yourself. Maybe you don't buy it for 260, but you were able to get it for such a discount. And now you're going to make 40 times what the 3 lots. And it's like the opportunistic approach of like, well, I know it's listed for this, but maybe they're just seeing what they can get, and maybe they don't actually need to get that much. So I think it's a really cool strategy.
And it's interesting too, because I mean, at this point, I probably looked at over 1,000 houses, and you never know how someone's going to respond to an offer. Like, we make offers that are like insultingly low sometimes, that we're like, they're going to be very upset. And sometimes they're like, maybe I'll take it. And then there's times when like you're like 10 grand under what they want for the house, and they like hang up on you and hate you. But you never, like, I always tell guys, I was like, build rapport, you know, treat people well, like, you know, but until you make that offer, like, you don't know how they're going to respond. Like, you may have an idea, but you really don't know. Like, and I can try to predict it now, and even then it's like, oh man, like, I don't want to make this call. And then you do, and they're like, okay, yeah, like, we'll entertain that. So it's just kind of wild, but it's fun times.
So you mentioned a bunch of these deals, right? And we're talking, you know, now you're a seasoned real estate, I'd almost call you like a real estate veteran at this point, right? But you have a high functioning machine going. Let's bring it back to the first, you know, couple months right after you transitioned from your job. And I'm talking about, like, was there a deal or something where you knew like, hey, I'm on to something? Like, how did you know that you were going to be able to build this thing into what it was? I think you need to get momentum and traction for this thing to know that you're going to keep going. And then how did you plug your partner in? I assumed it was just you in the beginning, but then it looks like you wove someone in who handles the operations.
Yeah.
Can you talk to that?
Yeah. So the first part, so how I knew I was on to something, the thing that everyone, so when I was working with this broker, like, we would buy deals from wholesalers. We would like buy like pocket listings and stuff. But the thing everyone was after and no one knew how to get was actual like direct to seller deals, right? And so it was just kind of this like boogeyman thing of like, hey, like, if you can get these, they're really good, but no one knows how to do it. So I was kind of like, I feel like if I can figure out this thing, like, I'll be able to get the deals everyone else wants, you know? But then part of that too is like, there's so much more to it, because we would go look at these houses and I would like we would not build any rapport with the person. I would go like look at it and we'd walk around for like 3 seconds and be like, 100 grand, let me know. And then I would like never follow up. I would never call them, and then like never hear from them again. I'm like, why'd they sell to someone else? Because like I didn't know there was any other way to do it. So with that, like, I learned, you know, it's more about the people in the house, right? Like, it's a lot more about like, you know, a lot of, especially houses are like crazy emotional, and people are very tied to like the legacy of like their family's house and what's going to happen with it. And, you know, all of those things, like we'll buy lots and stuff. And I always tell people lots are like one of my favorite things, because like they're just paying the taxes. They don't do anything with it, and there's no emotion. But houses are very much like, hey, it was in the family forever. Like, we care about the process. Like, we care about who gets this house. So I had never realized that was a thing until, you know, I joined a mastermind group and learned from there, and, you know, started learning that like, cool, it's much more like a people thing, you know, than it is like a house thing, you know? So that was a big change for me. But that, like, solving that, like, how do I buy the house directly from seller, and like, how do you get in front of those people? That was like the big eye-opening thing for me.
So how are you getting in front of those people? Is it like a prop stream thing where you're pulling a list? And then I know you mentioned you guys have the call porter guys calling in, and are they just calling a lead list and trying to book an appointment?
Yes. I mean, so, a lot of our stuff's inbound. Anything we mail, so we're mailing, like, we always mail inherited stuff. And then probably one of my like superpowers is just finding unique things that either there's opportunity or people don't mail them. Like I started buying trailers a few years ago, and a lot of people don't mail trailers because they think there's no value, or they think you can't remodel a trailer, or anything like that. So one of my skills is really looking in the market and be like, hey, what do I think people are missing here, especially in a competitive area. So we're pulling those through PropStream. We're pulling those through a few other sources as well. County records. I think we use Foreclosures Daily for pre-probates. So there's various sources for that. And then, mail's outbound, everything else is kind of inbound stuff.
Cool. And then my second question was, how did you know it was the right time to bring your partner in? Or maybe he was there from the get, working with the broker as well.
No. So, Jason, my partner, so I actually sold him a house. I sold him a flip. He was in the Air Force and was kind of doing this on the side. We kind of like had to interact on social media a little bit, but I was actually trying to sell the house to someone else, and he like messaged me on Facebook and was like, hey, I want to buy it. And I was like, okay, like I like you more than these other guys. So I ended up wholesaling him that house. And I just always tell people we both had a very good experience with that, because one of the main issues with the house is they had a foundation problem, which is very common in San Antonio. Scary a lot of places. Here it's like very normal. But on top of that, it had a sewer line that like clearly was snapped as part of the foundation. And we were kind of going back and forth over like $5,000. And I pretty much told him like, hey dude, like buy at this price. Like if you feel like, I was dishonest, or like if you feel like it, I missed something on the foundation thing or whatever, just let me know. I'll send you $5,000. Like who cares, right? So he bought it and flipped it, and we both just had a really good experience working with each other. And he was more in tune with the construction side of things, which I don't like. And we just kind of became friends after that. He started buying, like wholesaling a little bit, so I was kind of helping him with that. We learned that we had, similar values and very complementary skill sets. So the things he's good at, I hate or I'm bad at. The things he's bad at or hates, I'm good at. So it was a thing of like several things. So we had complementary skill sets, we had values that aligned, and then I was at a time where I was also getting kind of burnt out too. And the nice thing about having a partner is like you can leave. So I can go home and he can deal with stuff. Or I wanted kind of that autonomy of like, I was getting kind of burnt out because like this business is like an absolute grind. And sometimes like it's just nice having someone else along. So that's kind of how that came about. So we did a flip together, just kind of see like, hey, how will this go? Is this feasible? And then from there, we started just having conversations of like, what would it look like if we worked together? What would our roles be? What would our responsibilities be? Like, how are we going to build this business? Like, where do we want to go? All those things. And it just kind of grew from there.
Yep. It's a people game, man. Like you said, not only the buying the houses, but the fact that you can partner with somebody and enjoy the journey with someone else and watch each other grow. I mean,
absolutely.
That's the best part of the whole thing for us. So I love that story. I think that's awesome. Just getting familiarity with someone and having complementary skill sets. One of the questions I have for you is, what are you feeling about 2024 in the real estate market? I mean, you've been doing this long enough that you've seen this massive growth, right? And we talked to Chris Prefontaine, who's been doing this for 32 years, right? A couple weeks ago, we had him on the podcast. And, I said, the market's uncertain. And then I kind of like retracted my thought. And I was like, nobody ever knows. Like, it's always kind of uncertain. I think the uncertainty is the norm. That's what in 2016, people said the crash is coming, right? And if they stopped buying there, they missed 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 to here, right? So,
yeah.
But I'm curious, like based on, they're talking about cutting rates in 2024 a couple times, which if the rates get back into fives, I think the appreciations is just going to explode. Everyone's going to be back in the market.
Yeah.
do you think, just give us your take on what you think, what the outlook is. And obviously I preface this by saying, I don't know. And maybe you say the same thing. Of course, nobody knows, right? If you knew, then you'd be a billionaire. But I guess the point is
I'll pull out my crystal ball for you.
Yeah. Let me know what you think.
No, I mean, that's a great question. I think, obviously everyone's talking about that right now. Like, what's the market going to look like? What's 2024? And honestly, I can see it going either way. And it's so market specific too. So in San Antonio, our days on market are crazy high right now. Our inventory is higher than it was in 2019. So, we went from in the hottest market having 2,000 or 3,000 houses on the market at a time to we're over 12,000 now. So things here are slow, but I think if rates tick down, I think it's going to go up. I mean, I don't know if that's coming or not. The thing that we're just trying to be, cautious but opportunistic, right? So, we don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, we're going to sit on the sidelines because, I need to make money. I have 3 employees that need to make money. We need to keep doing deals, but we're trying to be, wise about those, like not jump into weird stuff. Like, there's no more like, hey, I think this would be worth more in 6 months.
Sure. Yeah.
But with that too, I'm cautious because I guess I tend to be an optimist of like, I want to be fine. Like there's always gonna be opportunity. But like right now it's easier to buy houses than it was a few years ago. It's harder to sell them. So, pick your poison. But there's a lot of people I know who have been doing this a lot longer than I have and have been through 2007, 2008, who are cautious right now. So I'm personally like, oh no, it's fine. Everything's good. Like we'll figure it out. But like, I know a lot of people that are like, I'm just going to kind of chill. Like if I have the money to sit on the sidelines right now, I'm going to do that. Which has kind of made me step back a little bit and just be like, like, do I know anything?
Yeah.
So, but with that,
I also think,
expect with like election year and stuff, like we're going to want the economy to look good. Regardless of what side you're on that. So I think we'll have some rate cuts, and I think the rate cuts will correspond with prices going up to like, correlate with that. So, I don't think anything's going to go crazy, but like the way people buy houses, it's like I have $2,000 to spend on a house. They don't care what the price is. They care what rate and purchase price gets them there. So rates are lower, they'll buy more. If rates are higher, they'll buy less. Like I guess that's how I see it. So, we're gonna.
Another thing to go along with that is like the people that have lived through 2007, 2008, they're older investors, right? And as you get older, you get more conservative with your dollars because you have, you maybe have more of a nest egg, and it's like, I don't need to grow this thing as fast as some of the younger guys do. So that's part of it too. But another thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know a lot about the San Antonio market. I have a bunch of friends in Austin, and I imagine that with the boom of Austin came a boom in San Antonio of some sort. I was talking to one of my good friends down there, and he's like, yeah, the market went up 50% in 4 or 5 years, 3 to 4 years. He's like, if it's down 15, it's still up 35 from 5 years ago. So it's like, that's the, everyone's saying it's so slow, but it's like, if you zoom out, it kind of had to come down a little bit from up 40% in
for sure
few years span.
For sure.
So I don't know if that's the same in San Antonio.
San Antonio's a little like, we're just kind of slow and steady. Like Austin has more kind of like West Coast, like crazy appreciation, but also drops a lot. So San Antonio's just kind of like, doesn't get hit super hard. We're just kind of like slow and steady. But my thing with all of that is even like, when I guess I was really surprised last year in the middle of the summer how quickly things could change. I didn't think you could like turn the housing market around that quick, right? So I didn't think you could raise rates that much that within 2 months it looked completely different. But with that being said, like our approach has always been like, cool, like we're not going to do in the past year and a half. I mean, I don't like big rehabs anyway, just because there's no reason to do them. Someone else can do them who loves them and is good at them. But so we try to stick to the easy stuff. But like my thing is like, I don't think the market's going to drop that much in the 3 months I own this. Like as long as I can choose stuff that like has, a faster exit time, like I can almost like outrace the market. Like, cool, it drops 5%. I make a little less money, but it shouldn't be in a position where you're losing money as long as you're getting something on the market in 30, 60, 90 days.
Yep.
So I think that's the way to do stuff now is like, you know, you got to be aggressive with how you price stuff, but you also like be aggressive with your timelines and like, you know, cool. Can your market really drop 30% in, you know, a few months if you're buying a 30% margin? Probably not. So you're probably fine. It just might, it's not going to be, you know, 2021 where you add an extra 10% because, you know, you were bad at managing your project and the market went up. So,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's just kind of forcing you to be a better operator, I think.
Totally. So I'm curious, Aaron, what's the biggest mistake that you've made in your investing journey? You know, for people that have been in real estate, they know that, you know, the highlight reels get posted on Instagram, and sometimes we try to post the negative shit too, like what's going wrong and why should you be cautious about this? But you don't get into real estate without taking bumps and bruises. It's just a fact. And I don't know anybody. So what's the biggest mistake or just an example of one that you've made that you feel like you've learned from?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm unlike maybe the other people, I make a lot of those. So I'll give a few just kind of general examples and I'll give a specific one. So stuff with contractors. I've had so many contractors steal money from me. Like, and I'll just like keep trusting them. Like I had a guy literally was like, hey, like, my phone's getting turned off this week. I need some money. And I'm like, cool. Well, I'm going to like support you and your family. Like, you're not getting the work done, but like, I'll just keep paying you, you know? So like, you know, people like, I've done that. Like I've made several mistakes with trusting contractors, paying up front for stuff, all of that. But, I'll give an example on, a deal or two. So we bought a lot in kind of a higher end subdivision. We bought it for, I think, $250. It was a 5-acre lot in a subdivision with like $1 million houses. I'm looking at it and I'm like, nothing is sold under $375 in the past year. So we bought this in April of 2022, which was, you know, fine at the time. And it was one of those that were like, hey, this will sell. It might not sell immediately because, you know, there's several lots. It's going to, you know, find the right person, wants to build and wants this one, whatever. But it was a great area, great lot, whatever. So we ended up like having this thing forever. We listed like 375 and we had several people interested actually. So on several occasions we had it almost sold where we would have made money. And then middle of 2022 happened and suddenly it was a lot less appealing to buy a $375,000 lot and build $1 million+ house on it when interest rates are like, you know, 7% or 8% or whatever. So we sit on this thing forever. Like we've listed it with all these different agents. We hired this luxury agent, listed it. He can't sell it, whatever. So eventually we sell this thing. Like we're about to just pay it off and just hold it and just like, we'll just sit on this forever until it's worth more. So we ended up selling it for like $275, but that was like 18 months later and we paid off a hard money lender and refinanced it with someone else and had been making like monthly payments on this thing for like ever. So we ended up losing like, it was like $50,000 or $60,000 on this lot. Just because, you know, like maybe we were aggressive, maybe we shouldn't have bought it, but it was, you know, some of these things with the market where, you know, it was a mistake. Like it's not something we normally play in, but at the time it made sense. Right. So we've had a lot of those. There's just times we got aggressive. We bought this stupid container house in the hood in San Antonio and lost like 30 grand on it because no one wants to finance a container house and no one wants to buy a house with squatters in it. And we're with the neighbors stealing the electric. I mean, it was just like one of those, you're like, oh, this will be fine. We'll make it a cool Airbnb, you know. No one wants to
you're like, oh, wait, nobody wants
to.
Yeah, nobody wants to come here. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought out those examples because the wrong person to get into the real estate investing game is the person who wants to mitigate all of your risk up front and not make any mistakes. And that's just, it's not possible. And you don't learn anything by having, you know, the thought process that you're just going to win all the time. It's just not how it works. So I guess as we wind down the show here, I'm curious, what advice, Aaron, would you, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give him some advice, what advice would you give him based on what you know now and the life experiences you had, the investing experience, the sales, marketing, whatever it is? What advice would you give your 18-year-old self and what?
Oh gosh. I I mean, I think the biggest thing would just be like bet on myself sooner. Or like, man, get into this stuff sooner. Like if you're listening to this and you're that young, like find someone who knows what they're doing. Be willing to work for them. I think I would have, probably told myself to go work something in sales. Like I just think sales is such a valuable skill. And there's just like the idea of like unlimited like income potential. But even then, like I feel like we were talking about this before the show started. I'm like, I feel like I'm so old and got in this so late. Which like I'm not that old. I don't think so. But even then, like if I could have got in this like 14, 15 years ago, like that'd be absolutely insane. Like if I would have bought a house at 20 and, bought a rental a year at 20, like life would be very different. So, I think the biggest thing is just finding, like there's lots of people that want to help people getting started. Like, and a lot of my stuff is like people ask me why I do stuff. I'm like, well, I wish this was a thing whenever I wanted to do this. Like, we help people flip houses and like, why do you do that? I'm like, because I wish someone would have when I wanted to flip a house. Yep. And I was like, I know nothing about this. Or, why do you hop on calls with people all the time? Like, because I wish it was a resource. So like a lot of people want to help. A lot of people want you to help you get started as long as like you're not just wasting their time. But
totally.
I would just get started sooner if I had a choice, if I could tell my 18-year-old self something like that.
Yeah. I would say it's never been more saturated to do the things that we're trying to do as investors and podcasters and whatnot, even just like running the show or social media, but it's also never been easier to learn from somebody who's already done it. So that kind of balances it out. And that's the gist of it there. Good. You got anything? I just didn't know if you had any like,
well, I had one more thought. I just, on Aaron, on your last thought.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned, we do have a lot of people that say, I wish I got started sooner. And you are a young guy. So, dude, kudos to you for how far you've come. I will say it's interesting. It takes people to go through some of the corporate highs and lows to realize that they're, they always, so maybe shiny object syndrome or like the next step syndrome. You're like, oh, well, when I get to the next promotion, I'll make more money and I'll feel better. But it's that feeling you mentioned earlier in the episode where like you weren't happy every time you did get promoted, or even if it was a little bit, the dollars would numb you for a little bit, right? And then you go back to, well, I still feel kind of the same. I'm not sure. I don't like this cycle. And so it's interesting. I would say that people have that feeling early on, right? Maybe they are in their mid-20s. Like it doesn't totally change. And I think you should, to your point, I'm agreeing with you, is like find that mentor sooner and find like, just try something, don't be afraid. You don't have, maybe if you're that young, you don't have a ton of overhead, you don't have a family, you don't have kids, maybe you don't have your own property yet. Like you have room to be flexible and grow. And I think it's worth taking a shot before you have the other fears that come in, because those do trickle in. And that's what a lot of people wake up and then they're 60, right? Because they just like, they let all the compounds of life just stack on them over and over, because it doesn't get easier, right? Just more things pile on. Yeah. One kid turns to two kids. Maybe you have a vacation property, you have your regular home and more bills to pay. Whereas I think the less baggage you have, the easier it is to navigate and find your lane. And so I totally agree with that sentiment. And I would, I stamp my approval too. I think a lot of people get stuck. So thanks for that.
Cool. Yeah. Aaron, this has been awesome, man. We really appreciate your time. I think, you're a really good resource. If you're not following Aaron, you should on social media. I'll have him talk about his social and what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to network, they want to learn more about you, or join the programs that you have.
Yeah, honestly, the best way to get in touch with me is just my Instagram. So it's just aaron.bihl. I respond to everything. I try to help people. If you message me, I'll definitely respond to it. It's not a bot. It's not I'm not that big. There's not that many people out there. So glad to connect with anyone who reaches out.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Aaron. We really appreciate it. This has been awesome. And thanks for coming on and sharing some knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show. And in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.